Hi everyone! Today we're gonna talk about a book that played a huge role for political philosophy. Politics by Aristotle. The first basis of the state is a man, who is by nature a political animal, so he needs a community, and who by nature and not by accident is without a state is either a bad man or above humanity. He has no sense of good and evil, of just and unjust. The second basis of the state is a family, which is a union of those who cannot exist without each other, male and female. This is a union which formed because of nature or desire. The union of families is a state, hence the state is a creation of nature. Every state is a community of some kind, and every community is established with the view to some good. The end of the state is good, happy and honorable life. For a husband and wife being each a part of every family, the state may be considered as about equally divided into men and women, and therefore, in those states in which the condition of the women is bad, half the city may be regarded as having no laws. A complete household consists of slaves and freemen. Aristotle claims that some men are by nature free and others slaves. From the hour of their birth, some are marked out for subjection, others for rule. He who has the power to take part in the deliberative or judicial administration is a citizen of that state. Like the sailor, the citizen is a member of a community. Sailors have different functions. One of them is a rower, another a pilot, a third one a lookout man, etc. And while the precise definition of each individual's virtue applies exclusively to him, there is at the same time a common definition applicable to them all. Similarly, one citizen differs from another, but the salvation of the community is the common business of them all. Children are not citizens equally with grown-up men, who are citizens absolutely. But children, not being grown up, are only citizens on a certain assumption. The members of the state must either have all things or nothing in common, or some things in common and some not. That they should have nothing in common is clearly impossible. But should a well-ordered state have all things as far as may be in common, or some only and not others? Aristotle believed that citizens ought not to attain the greatest unity, even if they could, for it would be the destruction of the state. A state is not made up only of so many men, but of different kinds of men, so diversity is a good thing. Aristotle highlighted the main principles of the rule. They should rule who are able to rule best, while there should be continuance of the same persons in power, where is it possible, yet there is not possible by the reason of the natural equality of the citizens, so they must change at the end of the year or some other period of time. Should the citizens of the perfect state have their possessions in common or not? He claims that the property should be in a certain sense common, but as a general rule private, for then everyone has a distinct interest. Men will not complain of one another, and they will make more progress because everyone will be attending to his own business. Philosopher Thales of Chalcedon was the first to affirm that the citizens of the state ought to have equal possessions. Plato, in the Laws, was of opinion that to a certain extent accumulation should be allowed, forbidding any citizen to possess more than 5 times the minimum qualification. Aristotle notes that in that case the number of children should also be fixed. The limit should be fixed by calculating the chances of mortality in the children and of sterility in married persons. In his opinion, the neglect of this subject is a never-failing cause of poverty among citizens, and poverty is the parent of revolution and crime. The equalization proposed by Thales is imperfect, for he only equalizes land, whereas a man may be rich also in slaves and cattle and money, and in the abundance of what are called his movables. Either all these things must be equalized, or some limit must be imposed on them, or they must be let alone. Aristotle claims that citizens of a state must know each other's characters. There they do not possess this knowledge, both the election to offices and the decision of lawsuits will go wrong. Clearly, then the best limit of the population of a state is the largest number which suffices for the purposes of life and can be taken in at a single view. Much the same principle will apply to the territory of the state. It should be difficult to access to the enemy and easy to egress to the inhabitants. The art of war is a natural art of acquisition, an art that is practiced against wild beasts and against men who, though intended by nature to be governed, will not submit, for war of such a kind is naturally just. The government must be organized with a view to military strength, and so with respect to property. There should not only be enough to supply the internal wants of the state, but also to meet dangers coming from without. The property of the state should not be so large that more powerful neighbors may be tempted by it, while the owners are unable to repel the invaders, nor yet so small that the state is unable to maintain a war even against the state of equal power and of the same character. In all states there are three elements. One class is very rich, another very poor, and a third in a mean. It is admitted that moderation and the mean are best, and therefore it will clearly be the best to possess the gift of fortune in moderation, for in that condition of life men are most ready to follow rational principle. But he who greatly excels in beauty, strength, birth, or wealth, or on the other hand, who is very poor, or very weak, or very much disgraced, finds it difficult to follow rational principle. Thus, it is manifested that the best political community is formed by citizens of the middle class, and that those states are likely to be well administrated in which the middle class is large, and stronger if possible than both the other classes, to prevent either of the extremes from being dominant. Aristotle distinguished 6 forms of the state, and he believed that there are true and perverted forms. True forms are monarchy, aristocracy, constitutional government, and perverted forms are tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy. Governments which have a regard to the common interest are constituted in accordance with strict principles of justice, and are therefore true forms, but those which regard only the interest of the rulers are all defective and perverted forms. The true forms of government, therefore, are those in which the one, or the few, or the many govern with the view to the common interest. But governments which rule with a view to the private interest, whether of the one, or of the few, or of the many, are perversions. Tyranny is a kind of monarchy which has in view the interest of the monarch only. Oligarchy has in view the interest of the wealthy, democracy of the needy, none of them the common good of all. The first governments were kingships, because when cities were small, men of eminent virtue were few. Further, they were made kings because they are benefactors, and benefits can only be bestowed by good men. But when many persons equal in merit arose, no longer enduring the preeminence of one, they desired to have a commonwealth, and set up a constitution. The ruling class soon deteriorated, and enriched themselves out of the public treasury. Riches became the path to the honor, and so oligarchies naturally grew up. These passed into tyrannies, and tyrannies into democracies. Best form from Aristotle's perspective is constitutional government, and democracy is the worst one, because the majority are poor and they do not have the skills to rule. Aristotle emphasized that there is no room for moral excellence. They fully will lead them into error, and their dishonesty into crime. The main functions of the state, according to Aristotle, are to control the matters of religion, war, revenue and expenditure, market, city, harbors, country, courts of law, records of contracts, execution of sentences, custody of prisoners, audits and scrutinies, and accounts of magistrates, and lastly, public deliberations of the state. And that's it. Best wishes, see you soon.